Okay, so this is video 4 in a series for Project 5 in typography for spring 2016. And we have played around with subheadlines in that we changed their size, their color, maybe the font, and built what's called a paragraph style. But now we're going to take care of this headline. And in this project, the headline is these two words, graphic arts. Now, when I'm working with headlines and I'm doing something more artistic, I usually isolate this type so that it's in its own box, okay? So I'm going to cut this type. So I'm going to hit Command X for cut. It's also under Edit, Cut. But Command X copies it and deletes it, okay? There, he's gone. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to zoom out just a little bit. I'm going to also move this text box. And I am going to draw a separate text box, clicking and dragging. Doesn't matter what size as long as it's big enough to hold that type. And I'm going to paste, which is Command V, or as in Victor, or Edit, Paste. Not paste in place, we don't worry about that, just paste on this one. And I did notice that I still have my hidden characters on. I did notice that it did add an extra return in there. You see my cursor's below there and there's a little pound sign? You want to put your cursor there and just hit the delete key so that way it gets rid of that extra space. Those can create problems for you. Anything excessive creates problems. Okay. I might even isolate these two words from one another because I like to be more creative. I don't like flat, bland, centered, all the same size, all the same font. That's so boring. So I'm going to isolate the word arts by cutting it, which is Command X, and drawing a text box for it. Now before I do, I'm going to reduce the size of this text box. Again, I'm using the black arrow tool for this to reduce the text box. I don't need to change the type, just the box. Drawing another text box and I'm pasting in the arts. Now it is good operating procedure for you guys to have these blue bounding boxes about the size of the type, okay? So if you have bounding boxes that are really big like this and you go to try to click on something else, let's say I have arts really big, arts. And I go to try to click on graphic. So I'm clicking on arts. Yep, I'm clicking on graphic. Nothing's happening. It keeps on clicking arts. Well, don't make your boxes so big, and then this problem will not come up. Okay? Of course, it's really graphic arts, isn't it? Now, if I really wanted to be creative, I might even isolate the capital letters of each of these words. If I really want to push typography. So I'm going to keep these and I'm going to copy them. Now here's the quick way to copy these because I'm going to keep these intact and I'm going to play. But I'm going to keep these intact. I might work with these with the G and the A with them. But how do I copy and paste this over to just the right of it without using copy and paste? Tab? Nope.
No, Alt.
Alt. Okay, so first I have to get them. Now you can get, what I do is I tend to go outside of the blue boundaries and I click and drag over the two items with the black arrow tool known as the selection tool, and it's contact sensitive, meaning whatever it comes in contact with, it will select. Very cool. The other way you could do this is clicking on the word graphic and holding down the shift key and clicking on arts. That's another way to select multiple objects. I tend to be a click and drag kind of gal. Now, both Sean and Sepida told me hold down Alt key, which is also the Option key on the Mac. Alt, drag it over. There we go. That's copy and paste, and you have absolute control of where it's going to paste. How would I get the G in its own box and an A in its own box? Highlight the character, cut it, which is Command X or Edit, Cut, and draw a separate text box someplace away from the other text boxes and paste it, which is Command V, as in Victor. So there's my G. There's my graphic. Also, I'm going to take the bounding box of graphic and I'm going to shorten it because the G is no longer in there. I'm going to do the same thing with the arts word. I'm going to copy the A by highlighting it, hitting Command X to cut it, drawing a separate text box, and Command V as in Victor to paste it. And tighten up that box that the A is in and the RTS is in. Okay. Now I could play with this small or big, but I really probably should zoom out because this headline is going to affect this layout in dynamic ways, or it can. Now, I'm going to move this one with the non-isolated G and A. I'm going to move these so I can click and drag over them, and I'm going to just, this is something that as a beginning user, this is really frustrating because if you go to click and drag on this and you do this, it makes the boxes bigger. So if you see that the regular black arrow, single black arrow, if it changes to a double black arrow, whether it's a curved one or a straight one, do not click. Hover over till it turns back to the solid black arrow. Then it will move your objects without screwing their boxes up, okay? So wait till that solid black arrow happens and then you can move it. So I moved that out in the pasteboard. This is the pasteboard, the gray area. It's where we park things that don't need printed. Now, are you ready for some serious excitement here? Something that, again, is a life-altering time saver. If I grab both of these bits of type here with the black arrow tool, again, I click away from them, but then once I start clicking, I grab them. And I hold down Shift and Command. We've talked about this, I think, maybe before. Shift Command. Don't use the rotation tool. You see how I'm floating over this? It's very tiny. Float over it, and that's the rotation when it gives you a curved double arrow. What I'm looking for is just the regular double arrow. There he is. And I click and drag, holding down Shift and Command. I let off the mouse first. Keep Shift and Command held down while you're dragging. And then, after I let off the mouse, and I like what I see, I let off Shift and Command. Okay, there is an order. There's a method to the madness. I just made those really big, really quick, just like that. I'm all about just like that. Now, maybe I want my G to be enormous. What's stopping me? Nothing. I'm going to take my G only, and I'm going to hold down Shift and Command, and I wait till the double arrow icon comes up that's straight, and I click and drag, and my gosh, look at that big giant G. I might even have that G so big that it's going off the page. Oh, shame on me. This would be what it would look like if it were to print. Oh my gosh, I'm really pushing it. I'd rather see you guys push it than play it safe and go everything centered. You know what I'll tell you right now, when you guys are in critique and you have future professors and even professors like myself, when we tell you your design looks safe, that is not a compliment. Safe design is boring design. It's just a way for us to tell you it's boring without being rude. Now I'm going to move the RAPHIC. I see an area of that G that is just begging to gobble up that little bit of R right there. It says, R, you're delicious. You'll fit right there just fine. That fits beautifully there. So I'm taking advantage of the negative space of that G to get the rest of the word to fit in there. I might increase graphic or the graphic part just a little bit too, until it's just at the edges of that G. So I hold down Shift and Command to make it bigger, and then I can move it around. I let off Shift and Command when I like it, and I can move it around. Now that's a little too tight for my taste, but I don't like it touching. I'm going to have it not touching. Tight, but not touching. That's called TNT in the design field. Tight, not touching. It's a real acronym. I'm not making this stuff up. This is becoming more interesting all of a sudden, isn't it? We went from a safe design to something a little bit more dynamic. Now I got to figure out what to do with the word arts. Maybe I put the A in this negative space between the D center of the P and this big G. Maybe that'll fit in there nicely. And maybe if I hold down Shift and Command and I click and I drag, I can get it to fit in there where it's got a good amount of space, but not that it looks like I actually thought about the space. And you know what? Who says I have to have arts as all lowercase for the RTS? I don't. What's the quickest way to, whoa, I'm gonna, see all my invisibles? Now it's getting crazy. Woo, sometimes you gotta turn these off. I'm gonna go to type, hide hidden characters. There we go. And sometimes these bounding boxes get crazy too. If that's the case, make sure you're not in the type box with the type tool. Hit the W key. Yeah, I like working, when I'm working in headlines, I usually work in what's called the preview mode, which is W. W turns that off and on. Working mode versus preview mode. But how would I make the ARTS all caps without retyping it? You guys know the answer to this question, don't you? How do I make RTS all caps without retyping it? Am I getting warmer? Yes. Character formatting controls. Big T, big T. There we go. All caps. Again, you want to make sure your bounding box is about the same shape as your type. And I'm going to increase this as well. Actually, I don't like it that big. I'm going to take it down. And you know what I really want to capitalize on? Oh, you know what? This might read as Garts. Does anybody read Garts as that? Does that look like Garts? Or does it seem like graphic arts? Because if it looks like Garts, I got to rethink this. It's okay? We're okay? Okay. I'm having some space issues too. That R doesn't want to play nice with that P, so I'm having to make it smaller. Yeah, I'm not totally digging this, but I might work around it. Now to ground this element, guys, there is nothing like, oh, who was it? I think it was, I'm going to call on a name here. It was it Sabrina who had the stuff where I drew the lines and said, hey, this would look like ornaments or stuff that was hanging and it would make this design have more meaning and function. This now is begging for a little bit of line. I'm going to zoom in and I'm going to give it some line. In fact, I'm going to position this RTS so it's just at the corner of that P. That makes a difference. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a line from this crossbar of this A. I'm going to draw a line. I'm going to put it right in the center of that, and I'm going to hold down, and you know, it's all over the place, so if I hold down the Shift key, it goes perfectly straight. Oh, cool. And I'm going to make this line as thick as the line that goes in the crossbar of the A. And you're like, oh, how do you do that? Well, you could use the... by the way, I'm going to park my paragraph styles back over here because I'm done with them. You can use the stroke panel here, or up here, the control panel now it's not dealing with a typographic object. It knows I have a line selected, so I can also specify up here how thick to make that. I'm going to make this about as thick as that cross member of the A to give the impression that A is just continuing on. Now, I'm having a problem in that it goes from 10 points, I can't choose 11 points, it goes from 10 to 20. Oh, darn it. Am I stuck with 10, or can I go with 11? Well, I can go with 11 by highlighting this number in this field, which is the stroke width field, and I can type in 11, hit the tab key, and now that's 11 points wide. And I'll make sure it's aligned a little bit better. Ooh, I hate when it does this. Try to make it align a little bit better. I'm using the arrow key to arrow it down because it wants to jump everywhere. Wow, it's really getting interesting now. We just went from drab to fab in just a matter of a couple seconds. Not to say this is an award-winning layout, but this is not boring by comparison to just a plain old flat one-size-fits-all design. In fact, I could decide that since this is the intro paragraph, maybe I want this line to come down and nestle that paragraph. Maybe I want this line to move around the layout a little bit. So I can continue playing with that line. So today was about playing with subheadlines and headlines. You can isolate the subheadlines and make them their own text box if you wanted to play with them as well. Usually, however, subheadlines are not treated in fantastic order. The reason why is you want to kind of create some sense of unity and some sense of flow to your design. So we don't normally get too crazy with the subheadlines because they sometimes, if we do that, will take away from the trying to emphasize the basic headline. To me, the fun part is working with the headlines. That's always been my fun. When I was in publishing, every time I got an article, I'm like, okay, what can I do so that's going to be so freaking cool to this headline? Because I need to set myself apart from everybody else, and I need things to look awesome. Okay. Now, I don't necessarily think that this layout is working as far as where the type goes and where I might have image, so I would definitely want to move the type around to kind of open it up a little bit for imagery. Here's where turning the grid on helps a little bit. Make sure things are kind of snapped to the grid. I turn it off and on. I hit the W key and turn this stuff off and on all the time. I'm like, okay, this layout may be what I'm going to start with when I'm doing my sketching. Now, I'll have other layouts as well. This is just one. And this is a boring old 2-column grid too. Pretty boring stuff. Now, you'll notice my headline does not necessarily align to any grid elements. That's okay. Headlines don't need to align to grid elements. They just need to react well to the other elements in that it flows nicely. So you do not have to align your headline to the grid. This one's breaking the grid all over the place. You don't see it snapping right to any pink line. Okay, so the organized part is the body copy and the chaos part is my headline. In fact, I'm going to take that all the way over. And I might make this 2 columns. This is probably pushing it. It's a little separate. But this is just playing around. Yeah, I don't know if I'll take that all the way over like that. Now, what do you think I'm ready to do? Once I get things in roughly a position I would like them to be in, and I have a headline that I kind of am okay with, and then you can change your headline sizes and stuff, and gosh, you might even take the whole headline and do something like this where you grab it. I'm going to get the selection tool. I'm going to try to click and drag out in the white space and only grab those elements in the headline. You can group this stuff so it doesn't keep moving independently, each element, so I can go to Object and Group. If you were to double click on a grouped object, it will then isolate an element and you can work on it. Okay, so just because it's grouped doesn't mean you have to ungroup it to work on something. Just double click on it and it'll click on whatever you want to change. They're still grouped up, but you can still edit it. But what I'm thinking about doing now is, okay, let's really mix this up. Maybe I want my headline to go 90 degrees up the side of the page. Oh my gosh, stop me. I'm going to get fired for being such a rebel. This might go here. This might start printing in Germany. This might be a smaller. I need a better grid. This 2-column grid is not cutting it at all. Get rid of this. Now I have a whole other layout here that I need to actually copy and paste to a different grid because this grid is not nothing's conforming to the grid right now. Even though it's not conforming to the grid, though, it still has a sense of unity, does it not? Still, I'm not going all over the place crazy here. It still looks okay. But oh my gosh, look, I rotated something 90 degrees. Wow. Guys, it's not as hard as we make it to be. Now, it is sometimes hard work in the software. I will not tell you the hardware is not difficult. But the actual process of design, if you're willing to explore and push yourself, you can have some fun with this. And you can go from drab to fab in just a matter of a few clicks, just by changing sizes of things, how you juxtapose and place elements to one another, adding a little bit of line every once in a while, and rotating things, and making them big. Something's big. We call it visual hierarchy. Gosh, that black line just looks like it's begging to go right off the page. There we go. So once I have a few of these designed and laid out, the next step would be to print them in thumbnail view and start sketching elements in here. As far as, how do I want my visuals to react with the type? I might even have a visual in here that this type, maybe I have a big visual and this type needs to wrap around, like right here. Maybe I have something circular and that type needs to wrap around there. So this is where the sketching comes in handy. But when I was back in publishing, when I had, especially with illustrators and photographers, if I wanted to have a specific photograph take up this entire background, I would give them this entire layout. And they would know where important elements can go and where they can't go, because they know exactly where the type is. Same thing with illustrators. Artists who need to illustrate, maybe there is no artwork for this and you have to be the first one to draw for this, you have to illustrate for this layout. Well, I'll give you a layout, something like this, and then you can figure out where your drawings go. So let's talk about printing these, because now you might not be ready to print these yet because you're still manipulating things. But I do want to cover printing these and getting ready to sketch, because we do want to print these smaller than what they are. So here's how we print thumbnails. Now I don't have two good layouts yet. Okay, the rest of them I haven't worked on. This is going to take time. But let's pretend they're good. I can go to File and Print, which is Command P. And there are some very important things we're going to have to change in this print dialog box to make sure that we get what we want. And we don't pay a lot for printing. First, this is just black and white. We don't need to print in color, even if you did colored text. This is just for sketching purposes. Don't waste your money on printing in color. So where it says printer, I'm going to choose the HP 8150 option, which is it has a R08 TCP 341. 341 is the room it's in. And HP 8150, I know that's a black and white printer. I wish it said black and white at the end, but it does not. But I know that that's a black and white printer. And it's in T341. Now, what we have to do here, we want to print all the pages, assuming you do. If you don't want to print all the pages, just tell it which page numbers you want to print. You can just type it in right here. So if I want to print 2 through 3, it would only print this spread. Okay, but I'm going to go ahead and say all. Oops. Oh, yeah, gotcha. Where it says sequence all pages, that's fine. Where it says pages, we don't want pages. We don't want individual pages. We want this in spreads. This is one big canvas, guys. You know what is really when you're newer to design, what we will tend to do, and I did it too, is I tend to compartmentalize this as one page and that's one page, and I don't even think about elements going across the two. So I always now have elements going across pages if I can, just to give it a better sense of unity from one page to the other. That's called a spread, and so you want to click on spreads so when they print, they'll be together. That's how they're seen, so I'm going to print that way. Now, if you wanted to print the grid, you could. At this point, you've already used the grid. So if you wanted to see the grid, you could say print visible grids and guides, and it'll actually print the grid lines if you're interested in knowing, maybe you wanted some images to align to the grid, then you know clearly where that grid is. So some people will print the visible grids and baseline, or visible guides and baseline grid if they want to see the grid structure. Just for giggles, I'm going to put it on there just to see what it looks like. So this was just in the general print dialog box. So as a review, we changed the printer from the color printer, which is going to cost more to print at, to the black and white printer, which is the 8150. Under the word sequence, we had pages and spreads. We made sure spreads was checked. By default, pages will be checked. And if you wanted to see the grid, we chose print visible guides and baseline grid under the options section. Now I'm going to go to Setup over here in the far left column in this print dialog box, Setup. We do want to go ahead and make it letter sized. But here is where we check our thumbnails. It's down here near the bottom in the options area. And what I would choose, assuming you don't want to draw too small, I would choose 1 by 2. Some people, if they're in a real big hurry, and they're just doing real quick and dirty thumbnails that nobody's going to see, they might do them 2 by 2, which means that you're going to have 4 spreads up on a page. That's really tiny though. So for you guys to function a little easier, you might want to go with 1 by 2 instead of 2 by 2. Okay? We don't need to worry about crop marks or anything like that. What's that? It's under a Setup. Yes, over here is Setup. We clicked on Setup over here on the left. And down in the options area, near the bottom of this options area, you'll see thumbnails. You'll click on thumbnails and choose 1 by 2 right in here. I should make my mouse big all the time. I wonder if there's a way to do that. Now, you do not want this to print double-sided, because that's just aggravating, isn't it? I've warned you about this every time we print, and we always forget to go there. I mean, it's just how we are. But I'm going to go to Printer here at the very bottom, and near the lower left-hand corner, there's Page Setup and Printer. You want to choose Printer, and you want to make sure that this is not going to print front and back. So there's a warning that comes up. Just say OK or don't show it again if it comes up every time. And right now I can't see if it's doing double-sided. Well, actually, yeah, it says two-sided right here. Two-sided is off. Yay! Always check that, because you're going to be really disappointed when you have to reprint and pay more money. So I'm going to hit Print there, which is in essence the same as hitting OK. And I'm going to hit Print here. And it says, oh, it's giving me a warning. There's a text overset on page 119. Yeah, it's because I've been kind of creative with my type, and I put it kind of to the edge. So, oh, by the way, that page number needs to go. See, there shouldn't be a page number in the headline. Maybe that's the dot of the I. Maybe I can get creative. But here I'm just going to hit OK, because I know what I'm doing. I know I've got text going to the edge. And now it's going to the Xerox printer down in, or not Xerox, the HP black and white printer down in T341. Now, I don't have my name on this, so you want to make sure that when you're printing these that you get yours and not somebody else's. You might want to put your name up in the corner of one, maybe in the master page. Put your little name up there, and a little small. That way, when it prints out, you know who it belongs to. Okay, I'm going to save this, and then I'm going to let you guys work. I'm not going to talk about sketching yet. We only have 40 minutes left of class. And my guess is, yeah, you've been kind of working while I'm talking, but you still have a lot more work to do as far as managing headlines and subheadlines and that kind of stuff. But I want you, by the end of class, to get to the point where you can print this. Okay, I'm going to go get it and show it to you, and I'm going to stop the recording because I can't show it in the recording. So let me stop this.